and Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Is Monday, February 27th, 2023, and the time is 3:33 p.m. Councilors, have you had a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a motion?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The minutes from the last meeting have been approved. Next is consideration of the consent agenda. Councilors, do you have any items you would like to place on consent? Councilor Abbott.
I was going to say, is this?
Well, I was fingers on 4, 5, and 6. This only has 2 times in one.
Yeah, she said she was going out to get.
6, 7, and 8. Fingers for 4, 5, and 6.
Okay. Okay, so we have items 7 through 12 for consideration, and there has been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The consent agenda passes. So if your item was placed on consent, you are free to go enjoy this beautiful afternoon. So first item up is item 4, a resolution authorizing the mayor to submit to HUD on or before March 31st, 2023, number 1, a proposed home ARP allocation plan. Number 2, a signed standard form 424 SF-424. Number 3, signed certifications or other documents as may be required. And number 4, to act as the authorized correspondent of the city.
Move the item.
Chief, keep going. Okay, Dr. Thomas.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Council. I'm excited to talk to you today about the Home ARP program and our allocation submission for this program. And so you should have heard about this a while back, but we are now preparing to submit our allocation proposal to HUD. And so where that comes from, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that this is really for us to get your approval on a really high-level plan that then, once approved by HUD, will be able to draw down the funds that later will come before you as we're doing any particular request to spend out of that fund more specifically. So this is just to give you some high level about how we got to some of these big funding sources or why we're doing this, and then to walk you through our high-level budget that we're going to be proposing to HUD. So the House America program is a federal initiative to utilize federal recovery funding to address homelessness through a housing first approach. So they specifically wanted to target this portion of the ARP funding towards addressing homelessness, and they made a commitment to house at least 100,000 households experiencing homelessness and add at least 20,000 new units of affordable housing to the national pipeline. And so if you go to the next slide, you can see what the program overall is intending to do. And so this program is going to allow us to think about what that public service provision is going to look like. It's going to allow us to oh, this is not the side we're on. So they appropriated $5 million specifically to the city of Birmingham, a little over $5 million in the ARP funds to be administered through our Home Investment Partnership Program. And we went by September 30th, 2030. So we have a little bit of time to do that, but we only have until the end of this month to submit that allocation request to HUD. So our commitment is really to house at least 100 residents experiencing homelessness and to support 100 units of affordable housing, which we believe that we can do through this program with this funding. The eligible activities are around the production or preservation of affordable rental housing, tenant-based rental assistance, supportive services, homeless prevention services and housing counseling, and purchasing and development of non-congregate shelter, which means units that are not open bay sleep situations. They have to be individual housing opportunities. And so it's a little bit different than supporting traditional emergency shelter development. If you go to the next slide, the qualifying populations are homeless, and this is really the HUD's new definition of homelessness, which is a bit more expansive than it used to be. But it is those who are homeless, those who are also at risk of homelessness, as well as those fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking, as well as other populations, so families requiring services or housing assistance to prevent homelessness, and at greater risk of housing instability. So that expands kind of who the population is that we can serve with this. So we really went through a robust consultation process over the last year and a half. The City of Birmingham collaborated with housing partners and service providers serving the whole metropolitan area to include 30 housing partners and agencies whose clientele include qualifying populations. We also did outreach through surveys and in-person virtual meetings. We received comments that were documented via these surveys, which you can find all that information in the larger allocation plan that we'll be submitting to HUD. We also published a survey online soliciting feedback from stakeholders around the eligible areas. We received 48 responses from that. The summary responses identified the development of affordable housing as one of the top priorities, and I'll go to once we get to the next slide, demonstrate the other large categories that came out of that. Also in March of 2022, Mayor Woodfin established a neighborhood housing and homelessness subcommittee with the goal of identifying workable solutions. This group met every week over that month, and we gained really targeted feedback from that group around what sorts of provisions they wanted to see around addressing homelessness and affordable housing in Birmingham. We also engaged with Red Birmingham to do research and development and develop a set of recommendations based on some interviews with folks experiencing homelessness as well as public service providers. They conducted outreach services over the course of 15 days. And so if you go to the next slide, you can see a little bit about the summary and recommendations that we received. And so they really identified that some of these key areas that we want to focus on within the allowable opportunities through this grant. The development of affordable rental housing was one of the greatest priorities, as well as housing-related supportive services, the preservation of affordable housing, and then tenant-based rental assistance, as well as non-congregate shelters, which we're already starting to work on through our Home for All program. If you go to the next slide. There's a really high-level budget that we'll be submitting that kind of breaks down within those high-level categories some specific funding that would be associated to that within the allocation amount that we have. So predominantly through acquisition and development of non-congregate shelters, as well as the development of affordable rental housing is incorporated in there, about $4 million connected to that, because it was one of the number one things that folks asked for, but also it's the most costly to actually develop. So we did this based on some percentages around what were the big buckets that folks wanted to see, aligned with what amount of money that we have and the cost of it that is related with doing these different activities. We then did about $200,000 for supportive services, $500,000 for tenant-based rental assistance, and then $374,000 for nonprofit operating, and $700,000 for admin and planning. And so again, this is a really high level budget. They asked for us to do a breakdown, but we're allowed to change that budget once we receive the funding. We just have to let them know exactly what we're going to be using it for, because they understand that these are estimates and that these might cost different things when we actually start to do the spending. If you go to the next slide, the reason that this is so significant is thinking a little bit about that pathway or pipeline that we discussed in our previous presentation with Home for All is that this really helps us to get in that transitional permanent supportive space. We've really been focusing on the temporary and the sustainable home ownership, and with Home for All we're really looking into that in between temporary to transitional, but this is going to provide us an opportunity to support and do some significant investment in the transitional to permanent supportive space, thinking a little bit more about how we really make that pipeline more robust. And so pending your questions, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Thomas. Madam President, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Thomas, for this presentation. Glad to see this allocation is coming to the city of Birmingham. We know that this population is residents are the ones that we, of course, want to direct all focus to provide them a good quality of life. I do have a question regarding the last set of slides. You have the different types of housing, temporary, transitional, and permanent supportive, and of course your sustainable piece. I served on the One Roof Board, and so I just have a question. Are most of these, not necessarily vouchers, or these options, are they allocated through organizations like that, or do they come directly from the city, or are you looking at potential property owners or what do I want to call them, landlords that will be willing to open their areas for this?
This traditionally is for us supporting HABD residents and goes through them to support or support the funding that they provide.
Thank you, thank you. And I guess, does this quantify then the number of units that we may be able to allocate out of the over 5 million?
Yeah, so that's kind of, again, based on an estimate of what we think with this amount of funding we would be able to, through whether it be renovations to existing buildings or new construction, the amount of units that we'd be able to create through this program. So if you think about, we've actually within that Rev Birmingham paper that they did, the analysis, they talked a lot about how can you utilize hotels and motels and transitioning those into non-congregate housing because there's already the infrastructure there. So doing having some sort of existing renovations would cost less for us than having to do some new construction of this type and to provide us more units. And so we're thinking we would be able to leverage those types of opportunities with this funding, which would allow us to get to that amount of units.
A last question, Madam Chair. Dr. Thomas, I was also, right now throughout the United States, and of course here in the city of Birmingham, we're seeing the cost of rent spiraling out of control, even for those residents who could necessarily afford it. So did this factor into the period of time between now and the 7-year period that we have to dispense this money? How did your budgeting, did it take into account of that, or do we have some negotiation that we're able to make with landlords?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think being able to have the opportunity to have this funding always gives us a place of negotiation to support what we want to see and to really, sway or better inform landlords to think about that, as well as it gives us an opportunity with the tenant-based vouchers to fill a gap. Yes. So if, that whatever the housing authority can provide is not enough for us to bring down the cost for the resident, then we're allowed to install some of our funding so that the cost to the resident at the end is something that's reasonable for them versus making the developer whole.
Right. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Abbott.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for your presentation. So I've gotten stuck on the non-congregate shelters. So you said that would be like a hotel or motel where people would be independent, sort of, and able to cook and do all that stuff in their own place rather than meeting together somewhere where you might transmit COVID or something.
Right, so non-congregate really just means instead of being in an open bay facility where you share a one room where your beds might be and you share the bathrooms and you share all the other things, this gives you an individual unit. So kind of like our micro shelters are considered non-congregate because you have your own individual sleeping space. And so when I mentioned the apartment or hotel, motel, rehab, it's really because that's already a building that has that infrastructure. So we would only need to do renovations to something like that because the infrastructure, the bones of it already have what's needed, but we would make those rental units, or we would make those, that could even become condos potentially, depending on what kind of renovations we would do to that. But it would cost much less than us doing a development from the ground up. Does that make sense?
It does, it does. So the thought would be to find apartment complexes or hotels or something that are supposedly or presumably distressed, and we would buy them and then put these people in there. Would this be temporary or would this be transitional?
Yeah, so it could be either. It's really up to us around what, for transitional housing in particular, it's usually 12 to 24 months. And we, of course, as we've been talking about with the micro shelters, would then be providing wraparound services that would prepare you to move to something more permanent. And then we also have permanent supportive, which can be 24 months and beyond, but that really supports you being able to continually leverage, whether it's your insurance or your health insurance or something like that, to live there more long term. So really thinking about the population that needs that kind of wraparound service provision and connection to their benefits in order to maintain housing.
And these places would be operated by whom?
So we would be looking for service providers that would be able to do that. Many of our existing service providers do manage transitional and permanent supportive housing, and so really, again, tapping into supporting the capacity of our operational providers, which we've kind of baked into this as well, for them to take on more clients or to be able to take on more of an additional development.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President, do you have any more questions?
I don't have any more, thank you.
Okay. I guess, how many housing units or how many people are we looking to house with this budget?
So our goal is 100 units and 100 folks.
You said that, I'm sorry. You
That's
definitely
okay.
said that. And you said this is a mixture of like hotels and motels and,
Well, I think that that's an opportunity. So it's an opportunity because it has the kind of bones that would make something like this not only take some dilapidated properties and some properties that we might want to change the use of that we have in our community existing to revitalize them, but we're not stuck with doing that. We also have opportunities to create new developments or to look at other types of housing developments out there that could be rehabbed as well.
okay. And you were saying it also goes towards supporting the housing authority residents?
Yes,
as well?
so the tenant-based vouchers can support the housing authority with their population as well.
And then the affordable rental housing, is that just for homeless or is that for people in need?
Well, it's, because of the new expanded definition of homelessness that HUD places here, it really offers us a broad swath of folks that we can engage in because it includes people who are at risk of homelessness. So it is within a particular kind of annual median income, but it's not just folks who are currently experiencing homelessness.
Yes, I forgot who told me this, but it's amazing the number of kids who are considered homeless, which means, what is it? They usually don't know where they're staying outside of 6 months. So there's a large population of children where literally they're swapping homes, multiple times a week. And then we think about domestic violence. A lot of times when they flee the situation, they're cut off financially. So I think this is great because there aren't enough shelters really for domestic violence and human trafficking. So I'm excited about this. I think this is going to be really good. I'm really glad you're here because, we've talked about doing these things, but it seems like you're putting these things into action. So thank you for that. Councilor Abbott, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just want to know when the RFP is due for those little shelters, the little tiny ones.
So folks have already submitted. We're actually working with the finalists to refine their scopes and the budgets, and so you'll be seeing something about that pretty soon.
Good. I apologize for asking that question. It wasn't on the agenda, but I just had to ask because I'm so curious to see.
We're in the mix of it, and it's exciting, so I think y'all will be excited.
That's great. No, this sounds wonderful because I live in an area where there's lots of homeless people living in the bushes and in the parks and in the woods and in the vacant houses, and then bad things happen, and, you know, it just goes downhill from there. So if we can do something to help, this is great.
Absolutely.
And then whatever kind of support you need when we go to NLC, especially when we talk to the agencies, if we run across HUD, I think that would be good for us to advocate on this behalf for all these grants that you're applying for, so we can be on their radar.
Absolutely. I will definitely send y'all more information, and I'll be there as well. So.
Yes, she'll be there.
Perfect.
So you don't have to memorize everything. But it's good to have you as advocates as well.
Thank you.
Okay, well, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Item number 4 passes. Thank you. Next item number 5, is that still going to be pulled? I thought we were pulling that one.
Did we get the information we needed?
It's number 6. It's number 6? Okay.
I thought it was 5.
That was fine.
I think it's 5.
Okay, let's bring up item number 6. A project funding agreement with Next Tech LLC, under which Next Tech will undertake a project to redevelop and rehabilitate the approximately 65,000 square foot Edwards Motor Company building, former Sticks and Stuff building located at 1531 3rd Avenue North, which will be leased for use as flexible workspace and collaboration areas for startup businesses graduating from Innovation Depot. And the city will provide incentives in support of the project to be paid in 5 annual installments of $400,000 each, provided certain leasing milestones are met, for a total incentive of up to $2 million.
Second.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hello, how are y'all?
Good.
I'm Griffin Lassiter, Senior Project Manager in IEO. Thank you for hearing this today. This project takes a blighted, neglected, crumbling building in Birmingham Central Business District and turns it into a rehabilitated location for startup businesses graduating from Innovation Depot and other clients. Other developers have tried and other developers have failed. It just simply over the years, I know of 2 in particular, and it just was such an expensive proposition because the building was in such terrible shape. I don't know if you went into it lately. I hope you didn't before this was done, but it was bad. The project forecast about $300,000 annually in revenue from occupational tax and sales and use tax, in addition to increased property taxes and business license revenue, and these it'll create 311 jobs over the next high-tech jobs over the next 7 years, and those folks are going to spend some money in Birmingham and generate a sales tax. With Next Tech, I just want to emphasize that we have a greater opportunity to retain Innovation Depot graduates instead of them going to other surrounding municipalities, and that'll be a big plus for Birmingham. At this time, I'd like to call up Mr. Trey Hill. He's representing the developers who are also here, and Jim Stanley is here from the Office of the City Attorney to address any questions you might have. Trey.
Thanks, Griffin. So this is where we're going to pass chairs.
Oh, we have some easels.
Somebody probably took it.
So as Griffin mentioned, my name is Trey Hill. It's good to see you. I'm an economic development attorney here with Bradley, and have had the good fortune of working with Mike Moran, who is the developer Next Tech LLC here. Griffin hit most of the highlights with respect to the project. I will stress that we have met with Michael Bell and Kim Bivens at the BCIA. we have an inclusion plan that is attached as an exhibit to the project funding agreement. I'll also say that we met with the Economic Development Committee last Tuesday, and those three counselors were all very supportive of the project. We commissioned the IEO department to compile an economic impact analysis that was actually compiled almost a year ago now. But Griffin hit most of the numbers, but within 7 years of the project's commencement, the expectation is that there'll be 311 direct jobs, 363 jobs when you count the indirect and induced number in the total. These are really well-paying jobs. They're $70,000 plus good jobs for the city of Birmingham. The cost, and Mike can probably, I know he can speak about this better than I can, but it's just ended up costing much more than anybody anticipated at the front end of this, as you hear over and over again in these strange times, if you will. So I know that the city's proposed commitment here with the $2 million cash grant payable in 5 $400,000 tranches will go a long way towards making this development one that our city can be proud of, and one that can recruit graduates from Innovation Depot and elsewhere from all over the country. So with that, I thought I'd pause and try to address any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Abbott, do you have any questions?
The picture on the easel, is that what it's supposed to look like when it's renovated fully?
Yes, it is.
Good, because despite the fact that it's kind of a mess, it's a pretty neat building, and I would hate to see it all covered up with, something else. So that looks nice. So this will all be office space? Is that
It will be.
So no retail on the ground level or any of those kind of things? No coffee shop, no?
Yeah, currently there are no plans for a retail component.
Okay, no, thank you. I was just curious.
Okay, thank you. Madam President?
Thank you. I am familiar with this building, bought some furniture there before. Just have a question. There's work ongoing or has started on that. Is that the fact that other the developers have had to pull out? Or that's not work that's already...
Well, there have been several developers that have pulled out of the project. There is ongoing work. The BCIA inclusion plan, that I mentioned, is dealing with all the tenant improvements that are ongoing. So, as tenants are signed up to lease a portion of the premises, then their space will be built out. Sort of built to spec for those tenants.
Okay.
And so that's what we're seeing right now.
I am excited to see the salaries that will be accompanying the jobs that are coming there. Now, let me just be sure I wrote this correctly. 311 direct jobs, and was that 363 indirect?
Well, 363 is the number that includes the
311. Okay,
311 direct plus induced and indirect.
Perfect. And typically when they come out of Innovation Depot, a particular business or entity that comes out of there, they're pretty much ready to, they've had the onboarding and all the other things that they're ready to, business is starting already. It's not necessarily a startup or an incubator. They're ready to go on.
They're kind of at that inflection point. Right?
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. That was my only question.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Abbott, do you have any more questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Madam President, are you good? Okay, I'm good. Well, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Item number 6 passes. Thank you. Thank you. Committee members, so it's not unusual to have certain documents by now, well, Chief, do you want?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this isn't Madam Chair.
Let him take the heat.
Yes,
because you don't-
Throw me under the bus. Don't throw yourself under the bus. So for item number 5, just to give more transparency to it, and this is, I will own up to this because me and Ms. Wilson was talking, and I just assumed it was another item, so that's all on me. But for this item, it's particular that some exhibits may not show before the committee due to when they have to close on certain aspects of this loan. So once it comes before the actual council committee, they'll be able to show those exhibits that were requested whenever they finalize all the necessary documents. But if it's amenable for the committee just to hear it, and if you're still unsatisfactory to what they present, we will yield to a 2-week delay so you can get your requested documentation.
Okay, well, I yield it to the committee members.
Well, I am a rule follower, and I am unimpressed with people who cannot turn in the information that is required in time for the meeting. It shouldn't even be on our agenda because the information was not included.
Yes, Council.
I know you took responsibility for it.
So that's why I want to at least let them give more clarity, because I don't think this is a first time. I think it is, from my understanding and what has been told to me, that this has been common practice, not just for this item, but items in the past. So at the least, if you wanted to just hear them and let them state their, claim of, this is common practice, and if we want to change it, we can change it going forward. But I'm relying on what the staff has told me, and they said this is common practice, is how it's been presented to the committee.
Well, I don't know whose common practice it was. It certainly was not mine. So maybe in ancient times or something.
I want to go ancient. But
All right, Madam President.
I would sort of like to hear what the project is. I know we're not going to vote, but I don't want to take up the time of the committee if we're not going to make a vote on it. But I am interested in hearing. But if it's not within agreement of the majority of the members, I'll just say we can delay.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we put it under old and new business for informational purposes? And if you could bring it back in 2 weeks with the necessary documents, I think that can be a good happy medium.
thank you.
Okay. So we're going to move item number 5 to old and new business. So we're done with the agenda. Now we will move on to item 13, old and new business, and that will be a loan agreement between the City of Birmingham and Own It Property Solutions, under which Own It will be awarded funds under the Community Development Block Grant in the amount of $400,000 to rehabilitate 4 existing homes located in the Eastlake neighborhood. I thought we heard this. Have we not heard this before?
We had.
I thought we had this. Okay. All right.
I thought it was withdrawn.
That was withdrawn. Okay. What, Mr.
Good
Stallworth?
afternoon. My name is Corey Stallworth. I serve as Senior Deputy Director of Community Development. And thank you all for allowing us to give you information on this proposed project. And so we are recommending to support Own It Solutions in the amount of $400,000 to support the development and renovation of 4 single-family detached homes in the Eastlake area, located primarily along 4th Avenue North in Eastlake, right off of the Porto Madrid exit. And so Own It Solution has been doing infill and rehab work for quite a while now. They've been doing work in Bessemer as well. They have a specific focus in Eastlake. And about 2 years ago, they renovated an existing home on the same street on 4th Avenue North and was able to sell that property. And so we would like to support this organization to make greater impact in Eastlake on this street, where we can bring greater revitalization to this block. And so the $400,000 will go towards supporting acquisition as well as rehabilitation of the existing properties. And one of the properties that will be redeveloped consists of a land bank property that will be brought back online as a result of this process. And so we're looking to strengthen our relationship with Own It and do more work. This is an opportunity for us to pilot what a strategic focused infill project looks like in Eastlake. And I do have Mr. Tremaine Thompson here with me, who leads Onus Solutions, to provide more information if you have additional questions.
Okay, perfect. Madam President.
I was just thinking, it seems so familiar that we've never had this presented to us. This is new. You must just have that face and project that we feel like we've seen before. What did I want to ask? Oh, you said how many homes were you?
So it's 4 homes.
Okay.
And what you have before you is the home that they renovated on the same street about 2 years ago.
Is this the before and then the after?
Yes, that's the before and the after. So you can see it was a burned home that was really trashed out, and they were able to redevelop that and bring that online.
Okay. And some of that acquisition may come through land bank? Is that what you're saying?
So they bought one property, 7821 4th Avenue North, from the land bank already. And through the $400,000, we will provide reimbursement for some of their acquisition costs.
Is it fair to ask what the resale might be of these homes? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, so we typically going to keep it in alignment with some of our other projects like NCRC. So typically between $190,000 to $210,000.
Okay.
190 to what?
To 210.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Council Abbott.
Okay, so did you have a business license when you renovated that other house on this street? The Birmingham business license?
The first actual house, 2 years ago, the ones that you all have, we had just a Jefferson County business license, but we didn't have a City of Birmingham. We do have acquired that City of Birmingham license now. But we had, of course, we went through the renovation process of permitting. We did permit. We had actual city officials come out from the permitting process to be able to renovate the house.
But you didn't have a business license. That's interesting, Mr. Chaz. That's very interesting. So what do homes in this neighborhood sell for?
Well, we really set the standard for the north side of East Lake. Everything on the south side of Puerto Madrid has been going in a high upwards of 2s on up. They told us we was crazy to be able to sell what we put the price tag on at $180,000. We sold that home for $180,000, an all cash offer on that house, just to be able to provide back the impact to that city or to that area, which was all of those homes on that block was pretty much dilapidated. And that's the reason why we took an interest to be able to bring those back up, to be able to have affordable people to come back in and have home ownership.
So which side of East Lake? I mean, I know where Puerto Madrid is, and Brown Springs and Oak Ridge Park and all that area over there. So this is East Lake neighborhood.
Yeah, so it's going to be right there by the park, the East Lake Park. It actually falls, 4th Avenue falls kind of right behind East Lake Park.
Okay.
You know, yeah,
Okay. So I know where you are now. So, the 4 houses, this is $100,000 each. I assume that each one of them doesn't need the same amount of money to renovate it. Some are probably in worse shape than others.
That's correct.
And so does this money come back to the city eventually when the houses are sold?
Yes, but typically in this case, it will come back in allowing Onit Solutions to develop more houses. And so we will work with Onit to develop a second phase of this once they progress through this first phase of revitalizing these first 4 homes.
Okay, so the $400,000 is seed money to get the ball rolling?
That's correct.
So there won't be any more coming back for $100,000 per house for the next phase of houses, because the $400,000 will just move over to the next 4 houses?
Yes, so through the CDBG program, you're allowed to reinvest program income with the same partner into other projects.
Okay, and is there a requirement that these be purchased by homeowners rather than somebody who's going to rent it out?
Yes, so this requirement will be that they will have to sell to individuals that are 80% of the area median income, and so they will have to sell to low to moderate income individuals.
But then the low to moderate income individuals are required to live in the property, not to turn it into yet another rental.
That's correct, and so that's where those exhibits that were mentioned earlier come into play.
The ones we don't have, right?
With restricted covenants and all of that, and those are normally done at a later date once we identify who the owner of the home will be.
Okay, well, that's all my questions. When I have to make a decision about $400,000, I want all the information, not just part of the information. That's just for your information.
Yeah, thank you. Typically, in the past, only the draft agreements have been brought to council, and not a lot of the other supporting documents that take place when a loan closing happens or the mortgage closing happens. And so moving forward, if that's what the committee and the council would like to see, we can provide that.
That's what I'd like to see. I can't speak for anybody but me.
Yes,
do that.
this is just for informational purposes only, so, okay. Well, I look forward to see you on the next Budget and Finance agenda, so thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
I move for adjournment.
Second.
And the next Budget and Finance meeting will be Monday, March 13th. All in favor say aye. Aye. The meeting has been adjourned.